Coming to the SPI modes, there are multiple modes in SPI communication where the programmer having a flexibility to program data in 4 different clock mode combinations. This depends on the clock polarity and clock phase. This allows the SPI communication to interface with a different type of serial devices. There are 4 different modes based on each the master and slave can communicate. That is mode 0. In mode 0, the clock polarity is 0 and clock phase is also 0. In mode 1, clock polarity is 0 and clock phase is 1. In mode 2, clock polarity is 1 and clock phase is 0. In mode 3, clock polarity is 1 and clock phase is 1. Coming to the SPI timing diagram, there are 4 different modes based on each the master and slave can communicate each other. Now we are going to take a mode 1. In this mode, the C pole is configured as 0, means the active state of the clock is 1, and C phase is configured to 0. The data will be sampled at the leading edge of the clock. Already we discussed about this. So when clock polarity is 0, the active state of the clock is 1 and leading edge is rising edge and trailing edge is falling edge. When C phase is 0, there is no delay for the clock pulses. So the clock pulse is stored at the on time with the SPI data. Okay, both are in same phase. So that the data is at the master output, that is immediately on the rising edge of the SPI clock. There is the rising edge of the SPI clock. So that data is immediately on the rising edge. On every rising edge of the clock, the data bit will be placed. Now coming to the master input and slave output, the master input data is latched at the falling edge of the clock. You can observe here the master input data is latched at falling edge of the clock. This is the falling edge of the clock. So in this region, the data will be latched on the meso line. So every falling edge of the clock, the data is latched here. You can observe here, so that the sample is received on the same phase. This is about the mode 1. So coming to the mode 2, in this mode the clock polarity is configured to 0, means the active state of the clock is 1, and clock phase is configured to 1. The data will be sampled at the falling edge or trailing edge of the clock. So you can see the clock polarity is configured as 0, active state of the clock is 1, and leading edge here is a rising edge and trailing edge is a falling edge, and we configure the clock phase as 1, means SPI clock starts after some delay. We can find out here, this is the delay. In mode 1, there is no delay between the SPI data and SPI clock, both are at the same phase. Due to this, the data is at MOSI 1 half cycle before the first rising edge of the SPI clock. Due to this, the data at the MOSI samples immediately on the falling edge of the clock cycle. This is the falling edge of the clock cycle. So the data at the MOSI starts immediately at the falling edge of the clock cycle. So coming to the data at input, the data is latched at the rising edge of the clock cycle. Here this is the rising edge of the clock cycle. So the data at the MISO is latched at the rising edge. So you can find out here at the same phase. In MOSI, the data is latched at trailing edge, and MISO the data is latched at rising edge. This is about mode 2. So coming to the third mode, here the clock polarity is configured as 1 and clock phase is 0. When clock polarity is configured as 1, it is an inverted clock pulse. So the active state of this is 0. Coming to the edges, the leading edge here is falling edge and trailing edge is a rising edge. Coming to the phase, here the phase is configured as 0. So the clock starts without delay. You can observe here the clock starts without delay, but it starts from higher state, and data is at the master output on the MISO line is immediately stored on the leading edge of this clock. This is the leading edge of the clock, and the input data is latched on the MISO line is on the rising edge. This is the rising edge of the clock. So the data is on MISO line is latched at the rising edge. This is about the third mode. So coming to the fourth mode, there is the last mode. Here the clock polarity is configured as 1 and clock phase is configured as 1. The clock polarity is configured as 1 means that is inverted clock, already we discussed. The active state of the clock is 0. Coming to this, the leading edge is falling edge and trailing edge is rising edge. When the clock phase is configured to 1 means the SPI clock starts after some delay. Here you can observe that this is the delay between the SPI data and clock. The data is at the output, that is on the meso line, is one half cycle before the first falling edge of the SPI clock. And coming to the data as the input on the meso line is latched at the rising edge of the SPI clock. In this case, the data is sampled at trailing edge of the clock. So this is about 4 modes of serial peripheral interface.